Welcome to the Shaman Vision Podcast. I got another great guest with me. This lady is a teacher, an artist, and a traveler. What's going on, Charity?
Hey, JD. I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. Now, Charity has been living in Japan for the last 2 years. Me and her went to art school together a while ago, but she's been living in Japan, and I think that's really interesting and cool. And not only that, she has been vocal on her social media about some of the issues that we're running into here in America. And I had a lot of respect for her for doing that, because it would be easy for an American to be outside of the country and kind of forget about or not want to acknowledge the problems and the issues we're having here. But she kind of took the opposite approach. And I also think that she's taken her time out in Japan to help educate those kids about some of the situations we're facing here in America. So we're going to get into that today. What's your general impression of Japan?
General impression? It's changed a lot over the last 2 years. I think my first impression of Japan was like, I've always been inspired by their design and their culture and the history. So yeah, everything was always like very exciting and beautiful. And it still is. Every day, every week, I can just go somewhere very beautiful that's near me, whether it's in nature or going to a temple and kind of feeling, kind of having like a spiritual moment.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
is that Shinto? Is that the religion, Shinto?
That's the native religion. There's two big religions here, and
Shinto
they kind of play on
and Buddhism, or is it, what is
yes.
it? And so the temples you go to, is that Buddhist temples or?
Temples are Buddhist. Shinto is shrines.
Okay. Oh, interesting. So your time in Asia, have you kind of learned more and leaned into the whole Buddhist kind of way of thinking and way of life?
Yeah. So yeah, I've always kind of identified as like agnostic for the longest time, and thought, like all religions are valid, and I want to like learn more about them. So there wasn't a lot I could learn about Buddhism back in the States without like paying for it, like learning an education. So yeah, I've taken my time here to like learn about it, and yeah, I really enjoy what Buddhism has to say about more about your like self than any kind of like, moral code.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, Buddhism's really cool like that, especially for somebody who's agnostic, that doesn't really know what to think about some of the outside forces of the world. Buddhism allows you to kind of find that place in yourself. You know what I mean? And work on yourself and meditate and kind of bring that peace bring that peace inside of you. Have you been meditating a lot?
Meditating's never really worked for me. I've tried it. I'm actually planning to go on, like, I'm being filmed for like a commercial or something, and I'm going to like a retreat where I'm going to do like the waterfall training. I don't know if you've ever seen that, where people like sit under waterfalls.
Oh, nice. That sounds, you got to get some really good pictures. You got to get really good pictures. That sounds really cool.
I'll try. I'll post them on my Insta.
Yeah.
And I'm also going to try Zazen meditation, which is a type with Shingon Buddhism. And it's very strict. I don't know if you've ever seen videos. It's like, I don't know if you've ever seen videos of like people sitting up straight in like a very specific posture. And then if you kind of like slouch, the monk just kind of like hits you with a stick.
I have seen, I took a Eastern religion class, or East Asian religion class. And we watched some documentaries where they kind of went into different sects of Buddhism. And I did see one little documentary where the monks were very hard on the initiates or the up and coming monks. And, I get it. I understand. I mean, to quote somebody, in order to be a master in life, you got to learn from a master. You know what I mean? So I understand.
Yeah, exactly. And there's so many different sects of Buddhism here. So like, there's so many to try. I haven't found one that works for me, but I'm going to try Zazen.
So what is that? If you're not meditating, or if you're not, if you don't feel like you're really good at meditating, how does that religion impact you? Are you reading text, or what are you doing?
Yeah. I'm kind of right now I'm studying how like Shinto and Buddhism here kind of intersect. Because they've kind of deified like Shinto gods, like native gods, into Buddhist gods here. So I've mostly been studying the history, but I also like listening to like the words of Gautama Buddha.
Who's that?
Wait. I actually have a good book here. But like oh crap, where did it go? But the words of the Buddha, I kind of, at least in Japan, I've kind of like taken some of those words to heart. Like some of them being like, you can't really give someone part of yourself in service unless you service yourself. You know, so kind of like things we say now, like you have to take care of yourself first
Right.
before you properly help others.
Right.
So it's kind of like good messages for life.
Definitely.
I feel.
There's a lot of wisdom in Buddhism. A lot of wisdom. A lot of wisdom. I research Buddhism. I like Buddhism. I try to take elements from it, especially the idea of meditation. And meditation is like a very vague term. You know, a lot of people can meditate doing different things. For some people, drawing or coloring in a book is meditation. For some people, it's sitting in a pose and, you know, complete silence. Some people, you know, there's a lot of different methods to it. And I've, you know, learned some of those methods, and I can meditate, and I'm very proud. I can't meditate for very long though. I'm still very novice, you know, but in certain moments I could, you know, after I get done praying when I'm in bed, sometimes I'll just have that Zen space where, you know, my mind is empty and my soul is full, you know, and it's a really interesting feeling, and it's a really pleasant and empowering feeling. Shinto is more of like you said, the older kind of more pagan-esque religion, where Buddha comes in and kind of redefines it as, it's not even a monotheistic religion. It's a non-theist religion, right?
Yeah, I think in Japanese it's hasengo. No, hasenman. Well, I'd have to look it up, but it's it translates to like the like 8 million gods, or like an infinite number of gods is usually what it's called in Japanese.
Do the Japanese have any interest in Taoism? That you're aware of?
Possibly. I'm not very aware of any Taoism, but
got you. Well, I would like to hear your opinion on how the Japanese feel about what's going on in America in regards of the coronavirus and the protests. What do they think about it?
Okay, I feel like I could I could give more help with this one. Again, I'm still like a novice to religion, so I'm sorry I couldn't give you like.
I like to touch on religion. You brought it up. It's a topic I like to talk about.
Yeah, I also do too. It's just I'm still like kind of a newbie about it. But yeah, so how do Japanese people feel about kind of what's going on in the U.S.?
It's the virus and the protest.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So like, for a long time, like Japan has kind of like idolized the US. To a point, it kind of makes me feel uncomfortable sometimes. Like if I just say I'm American, they think I'm cool, like immediately.
Well, that's not all bad, you know?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I guess I get like a good impression the first time.
It could be worse, right? They could, you know, you go to parts of the Middle East, you say you're American, they want to, you know, they don't like you. So it could be worse. Yeah. It could be worse.
Or I meet European people here, and depending, they might like me. But yeah, no, like they have a very good image of Americans. A lot of it stemming from our media, and our media kind of presents like a very cool image.
Our media, or like, are you talking about our music and movies, or what do you mean by
music, movies? Like that's the closest thing a lot of Japanese people get to the U.S. Some of them visit, but yeah, usually they get it from our media, and they consume a lot of our media here. As well as creating their own. And so there's kind of like an idolization, and like it's kind of, so like with everything going on with the protests and with the virus, I'm seeing a lot of like empathy, which is nice. Like they see it as like human rights issue, and they see it as like kind of the American people are hurting. At least with the protests, the American people are hurting, and like Trump isn't really doing much for it.
Right.
And yeah, they feel kind of compassion about this human rights issue.
Yeah.
And then with the virus, it's kind of like, what are they doing?
So is it an issue in Japan, the virus?
That's a very complicated question, and there's kind of like two groups of people with their perception of how the virus is being handled. So originally, when it first started becoming a big thing in the news, like around February or something, Korea and Japan had like the most number of cases, and there was also the Diamond Princess that was stuck in Japan in Tokyo, and they had to release all the people because according to Japanese laws, they can't contain those people.
Was that a boat, a cruise ship?
Yeah, it was the cruise ship. And so it was kind of scary. But Japan is like, they do everything very slowly. Like everyone has to kind of agree. So things weren't getting done very quickly. But we saw like South Korea immediately start shutting things down, trying to prevent the spread of the virus. And yeah, Japan acted very slowly, but there's kind of a sense of fear about it. Then it started blowing up in the US and Europe, and there was a lot of pressure from the way Europe was reacting to the virus for like Japan kind of to act the same way. And the US was kind of talking a lot, but not doing a lot at the time, but they were talking a lot about things needing to shut down.
Our current state of America.
And so after a lot of pressure, finally, Abe declared like a state of emergency for the entire country, first a few prefectures and then the entire country, which didn't really do a lot, but like by law, by their constitution, they can't force like a shutdown. They can just declare a state of emergency and have guidelines. But usually people follow rules, so people were following it, and they kind of did like businesses who weren't following the shutdown were kind of just being shamed by the local government, which was an interesting tactic. Yeah, shamed into shutting down. And things shut down very late. I think it was March, April. I think it was March or April. I can't remember. I think it was April. It was kind of late. And there was only like I think like 200 to 500 cases in the entire country.
Wow.
I think like 200 of them were in Tokyo. So yeah, a little over 200 cases. But they shut down things, and I started working from home for a month. But then they lifted it very quickly, and like the virus kind of wasn't like a big deal. They weren't doing a lot of testing, but I don't know, it hasn't blown up here. Just now it started to get worse again.
Oh, has it?
But
I was wondering because they're talking about the second wave that's supposed to be going on. And I wondered if Japan, did it right and they kind of shut things down early at the beginning. So now they don't have to worry about a second wave. But, I don't know. I don't think anybody knows what to do with this virus is the problem. Nobody really knows what's going on and nobody knows what to do. So there's a lot of confusion, a lot of weird shit going on all over the place.
Yeah. And like each country's kind of taking it in their own way. And it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well,
sorry.
I mean, I heard, I don't know too much about this because I try not to get into politics too much, but I heard in the previous administration, Barack Obama's administration, there was is it the CDC or is there a global health organization where a lot of the countries are supposed to be on the same page when it came to viruses and stuff?
Yeah, I think
that Trump eradicated before this virus happened. So if we would have had, some more organization, some more, collaborative effort, we might have been able to fight this whole thing in a more productive way. But, hindsight's 2020, right?
Right. Well, I'm hoping this causes like a lot of changes to happen because like it would have been best to like be more collaborative, and like it's kind of interesting because you also have to take an effect into. Sorry, my English anymore is garbage. You have to like keep in mind that one thing is like many countries have different laws. So yeah, like Japan was kind of wanting to follow what all the other countries doing, but they like couldn't because by their constitution, which was helped and written by the United States, they like couldn't.
Wow, so that's a trip.
Yeah,
so we fought Japan in World War II or World War I.
Yes, World War II.
And so they were on the losing end of that battle, and we ended up writing their constitution.
Yeah, we helped write their constitution.
That's
and they had
crazy.
to have a Japanese and an English version because like the U.S. government didn't really trust their Japanese version.
Wow,
yeah, so
that's crazy. You would think that the Japanese would have, instead of idolizing Americans, they would have some more like animosity towards us for, what was going on back then. I don't know. I mean, I just think the whole thing's interesting. The relationships between different countries, and it just sounds wild to have another country write your constitution. Like, you know what I mean? As an American, we don't think like that. Like, what if Canada came and wrote our Constitution, rewrote our Constitution, that would be, people would lose their shit. You think people are losing their shit now? People would really be losing their shit.
Yeah. Well, there's actually a lot of conservative parties in Japan, such as like Abe is part of a conservative party. A lot of them want to like rewrite the Constitution, and especially they want to like have I think like a military. They can't really have like a military presence here.
Wow.
So yeah, they want to change
who
that.
Who is the military presence then? There has to be some type of military presence there. Who was the military presence? Is it Americans?
American military.
Wow, that's a trip.
Yeah.
That's a trip. I mean, did the Japanese side with the Nazis during World War II? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, they did.
Yeah. Shit, man. History is wild. Yeah. I think I seen something on your social media where you said that you were trying to educate some of the. Are you teaching in Japan? Excuse me.
Yes.
You're teaching in Japan. What are you teaching?
I'm teaching at 2 high schools, and mostly like first-year students, so about 15-year-olds. I teach a class called like Global English. So they have like 2 English classes usually. They have their like official English class where they kind of study grammar and they have to like reach certain milestones, and then they have to like because like everything the education system here is completely based on like passing tests. So they have to learn English to pass tests. And then my class is kind of like a cultural exchange, like practical application of English, trying to get them to speak.
So are you teaching them about American culture, or are you just trying to teach them how to talk in a more fluent way?
Kind of both. I'm trying to like mix the two.
Oh, nice. And yeah. Are you educating those your students about what's going on in America with like the racial problems and the policing issues?
That's what I'm trying to do now, at least with one of my schools. My high level school, I don't have a lot of power because I'm an assistant language teacher.
Right.
So by law, like, because I've never had formal teaching training, so I'm like, wasn't really a teacher. So by law, I have to always have like a Japanese teacher with me, a teacher of English, and they're supposed to plan everything. So at my higher level school, I don't really have a lot of power to do that, but I can talk about things if I want to. But at my kind of my lower level school, I'm treated exactly as like the other teachers, and I have all of the power to plan my lessons. So yeah, I've started kind of talking about what's going on with the students, because with social media, they're seeing what's going on.
Right. So what are you?
What are you
teaching them? What are you teaching your students?
Well, when I first got here, I was kind of just teaching them about like American holidays, trying to be as inclusive as possible. But if it's not like the popular like holidays in the U.S., like the Christian holidays that are commercialized,
right?
They're not super interested.
Yeah, it makes a little bit of sense. What are you teaching them in regards of the racial and police issues in America?
I only started doing that recently because I've kind of built up confidence and like I feel like I could probably actually teach this effectively even with like of a low language level. I've kind of, since first year high school students, at least in my prefecture, haven't learned American history yet. At my school, they're going to start learning it next semester. So I had to like really talk to other teachers and learn like what they know. So I'm not teaching them too many things in one class.
Right.
Focus should be English, right? And like cultural exchange. So I kind of had to leave out like history. I had to take out like systemic racism.
Wait. Did higher ups make you take that out?
Kind of. They don't outright, in Japan, you don't like outright say, like, no, you need to take that out. They kind of just push you until you kind of like say yes, like, oh, that's really difficult for the students. I don't know if the students would understand.
Yeah.
That's a really difficult topic to talk about. Ooh, it's not very happy. Like,
yeah, no, it's not very happy, but so what kind of information have you been able to give those kids? Like what activities or what lessons have you been able to actually teach them?
So after some refining, because I was only able to teach them over 2 lessons this semester at least, with some refining, I kind of went on and like focused on, I did like a 2-part lesson. I did Black Lives Matter in the USA. So I kind of like talked, they've already seen like the news, and some of the teachers who were helping me, they showed like the George Floyd video and like some other things like in their other class.
Mm-hmm.
So to prepare the students for my class, so I didn't have to go too much into like why the protests happened.
Right.
So I kind of talked about like a little bit about like why the protest happened, and then I couldn't get into the history too far, so I just said like USA has a long history of police brutality. I
Right.
did teach that word because we needed to talk about it. And I was like, and it really hurts like Black people in the U.S. today and other people of color. And then I went into really focus about like online activism. So I wanted like the students, because I really like social media. So I kind of wanted to like focus the students on like things they can do, like what they have power with. Because like, yeah, online activism is a very new kind of idea. It's only been in like the last decade or so.
Right.
And
Yeah.
like,
As soon as the crop up of social media has really redefined the landscape when it comes to activism, because, you know, in the past, you had to rely on what the media told you. And the media kind of like, they focused on the protest for a couple of weeks, and then they changed their focus back to the virus. You know what I mean? And they get to control the narrative about that. And with that narrative, they get to kind of paint a lot of Americans' pictures. But with social media, you know, people can keep sharing, people can not derail the conversation, people can keep that information in people's faces and keep that conversation going, you know, which is really powerful. And like you said, those the kids in Japan are seeing media from America, and they're seeing this stuff in real time. And that's the cool thing about it. You know, like if you follow these blogs or if you follow the right people on Twitter, you'll get, you know, footage of what's going on before the news even gets it. So the kids in Japan or wherever can see shit happening in America before the news even broadcast it, you know, which is really interesting. And that's why I think this protest has been a not only just a nationwide thing, but a global thing, you know, because social media really connects us and brings us together. And that's really cool.
I agree, yeah, because that's what I've been talking about with my students, and even like international friends I have here. So yeah, like the first part we talked about, kind of like online activism and how like young people who don't even have like voting power, they still have power. So I kind of wanted to teach them what to do, and like how like teach them about what they're seeing, because they saw like the black squares everywhere on Blackout Tuesday, but they didn't really know like what the hell that was about. Even though I saw some Japanese people participating. And then and we talked about like the hashtag Black Lives Matter and how it's like now a international hashtag because of these protests. And then the second lesson, we continue to talk about online activism. And I talked about some mixed Japanese people that are famous, such as like Naomi Osaka. And I also talked about like a Japanese person who's like famous, really famous to them. He's like a baseball player, like Ohtani Shohei for the Los Angeles Angels.
Okay.
And how they're being vocal about the Black Lives Matter movement too. And I talked about Black Lives Matter in Japan, like because the idea about these protests in Japan is like this is an America problem.
Right.
You know, Japan doesn't have a history of slavery or racism, like is what they're taught. And I kind of like didn't want to, because like this is like a very new thing to them, so I didn't want to overwhelm them and like you know tell them about like kind of oppressive systems in Japan that exist. But I just kind of like told them like there's a lot of diversity in Japan, like more than you think.
Is that right? I was going to ask you about that. What is the population breakdown when it comes to race or you know, skin color, ethnicity?
Yeah, I think so far it's still 90% ethnically Japanese.
So it's very, very much a majority Japanese. And then is the second group probably Caucasians?
I think the second group would be probably Chinese.
Oh, okay.
Then Korean.
Okay.
I'm just kind of, I don't know off the top of my head, but I'm thinking about like kind of a population breakdown I saw a while ago. It was definitely Japanese, Chinese, Korean, and then possibly I'm just gonna go like with other, with probably like especially Americans are very high up on the scale of like I guess not really like ethnicity, but like where you're from, and then kind of like other European nations.
Is there a lot of Black people in Japan?
There's not a lot. There's more and more.
Is there a few? There's a few floating around?
Yeah. In
Awesome.
Osaka, actually, recently, there is like a Black Lives Matter Kansai based in Osaka, and a lot of the Black community in Osaka, a lot of them are artists as well. They've been very vocal, and like if you've been actually, one of them I know, I don't feel comfortable saying people's names because privacy is like more of a thing here, but one of my distant acquaintances, she just recently showed up on the local news yesterday, and she talked about Black Lives Matter.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I've heard a story about, I don't know if you might know more about this, or you might find this interesting. I heard a story that there was a really badass samurai, a black samurai back in the day. Have you heard about that story? Yeah. It's a cool story. I don't know how much, that gets taught or whatever, but I've seen that story because everybody thinks samurais are badass. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Samurai culture is like super cool. And to hear that there was a cool black one, that was pretty dope.
It's also just cool listening to his story because he was a slave.
Right.
He came here with an Italian merchant, and he got his freedom under like Oda Nobunaga, and he became like a respected samurai and like lived the rest of his life in Japan.
Story, crazy dope story. I think that's very cool. Do you ever play like speeches in your class to help the kids learn English and tackle some of the racial issues? Because it'd be interesting to play like a Martin Luther King speech or a Malcolm X speech during class.
I would love to. I'm trying to think of like what I'm going to approach next semester because I only had 3 classes this semester because of coronavirus. So I kind of did like a self-introduction, like who I am, because the students hadn't met me yet. Because their school year starts in like spring. So these were all new.
Okay.
And then I had 2 lessons to talk about like the Black Lives Matter movement. So I mostly did like it was writing focused. And I wanted them to like write their opinions. So I did my own presentation with like images and like kind of would ask them questions, like comprehension questions while I'm speaking.
Right.
And and you can adjust the level. Like I could ask a question about like what exactly I'm talking about, and if they can't answer that, ask them like an easier question, such as like who is this person? And then there's kind of like quiet. Who's the famous baseball player in USA from Japan? Like, Ohtani Shohei. So you ask them like an easy question to build their confidence, even though it's a difficult topic to talk about. And then I wanted them to start with writing opinions and like privately, because they don't really teach Japanese students to like say their opinions and how to support their own opinions. And even sharing, that's like really scary. So that's kind of where I started them currently, but we're going to start doing like a speech project. So they're going to start speaking in front of their classmates.
Oh, wow. That's interesting. Do they have freedom of speech over there?
Yes.
Yeah, freedom of speech.
But it has to be, you have to like kind of follow rules, right? So I actually attended the Black Lives Matter demonstration. It's not a protest, and I can kind of get into that in a minute. The demonstration in Osaka in March. I believe it was in March. And the organizers, who were Black community members in Osaka, they have to go in and you have to kind of like tell the police that you're going to be protesting, and then they have to station police to follow your protest to like protect the protesters actually.
Right.
So the police work with protesters here.
Well, that's cool.
And it's a very different system than back home.
Instead of like clashing with the protesters, they're helping the protesters. That actually sounds like a pretty efficient way to do it, you know?
Yeah.
You have this weird
the
dynamic because everybody feels like the cops
hecklers
are opposing the protests instead of on board with it. You know what I mean? Which is counterintuitive by itself. But what were you saying?
Oh yeah, I was just saying like any hecklers. There were some hecklers that showed up wearing like Confederate flag shirts and crap like that.
Japanese hecklers?
No. Well, there's a nationalist party that showed up, but they were just in a truck and they blasted like the national anthem of Japan or something. They didn't really
But okay, who was wearing rebel flags? That's funny.
So there's this American guy who I guess is working in a university here, and he was like threatening to like bring a dog to bite protesters and stuff. So we were kind of wary of him beforehand. And then he showed up wearing like some crappy Confederate flag shirt that looked straight out of like a Dixie
Wow.
Etsy page. It was lame. Yeah, he kept trying to
That's
like video us, get us to talk to him, but we didn't. Because he has like a Patreon page that a lot of, I guess it's really famous with right wing Nazis in the U.S.
yeah.
And like, I guess it didn't go very well for his page, so
Wow.
and it got defunded.
I wonder what his angle is. What is a white racist doing in Japan teaching people? Like, what is his angle?
There's so many of those here.
Really?
Because Japan is seen as like a perfect ethno state, you know.
Yeah, because of 90% Japanese.
Yeah.
And they have those connections to the that weird history, So
Yeah,
I guess I understand that a little bit. That's really fascinating. And I just wanted to say again, I really respect you implementing that in your class and you using your voice and your platform to discuss these ideas and try to educate people. I really, really respect that. What do you think are some of the solutions for the problems we're facing here in America?
Ooh, solutions? That's hard for me because right now I'm currently just focusing on like what I can do. Because I'm just a white ally, or I try to be as best I can. And I feel like I don't have a lot of reach back in the States, anymore. And like I have like a unique opportunity here to talk about what's going on and like to also, because again, Black Lives Matter is turning into like an international movement, right? Every country's addressing racism
Right.
in their own country because of this. And so I'm like taking the opportunity to like try to make Japanese people think about like what they can do to improve the situation for foreigners in Japan, especially Black people living in Japan as
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of what I've been focusing on. Like the little bit I can do.
Well, in my opinion, I think that is the solution, and I think it's for all of us in America, especially, but globally, to focus on the self and to self-analyze, and because we all have, me included, everybody has shit that they're working through, flaws in their thinking, trauma
Mhm.
from their past. We all have stuff that we kind of need to evaluate, because a lot of that baggage contributes to some of the problems we're having here in America, So I think, the solution is individuals need to analyze and refine themselves. And if each American or if each person does that, then we will see the change that we want to see. You know what I mean? Because we gotta kind of leave, Black people, white people, Asian, everybody needs to kind of leave some of that baggage and some of that misinformation that we've been taught growing up. We need to leave it behind. What do you think? How do you think the education system contributes to the issues that we're having? Do you think there's a correlation
In the U.S. or Japan?
in the U.S.?
In the U.S., I think there is. So actually, my unique situation is I went to a very small school in Stewartsville, Missouri. So it's K through 12 and like 200 students. So my graduating class was 16 students. And I've been reflecting a lot about like what I learned in school, and it's like I only had really one teacher that challenged what we thought and like talked about difficult things in history, like such as like Japanese internment and stuff that like a lot of the other teachers, like even our history teacher, wasn't addressing very
Right.
well. And I just started getting angry because I was like, our tax dollars pay for our education, and the fact that I didn't learn anything about like Black people in our history, or even just most people of color in our history, except when I went to university. And even in university, it wasn't addressed unless I took a specific class, and I had to learn about like major events in our history, such as the Tuskegee experiment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, from like my Black classmates, like not the education system we were paying for.
Right.
I was learning it from like fellow classmates because it was
Right.
never addressed in like this small school, and there's a huge education problem, especially in like Missouri.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think that is one of the major issues, because I know it's really easy to look at the problems that we have, and a lot of people like to talk about the problems, and it's easy to talk about the problems, but it's harder to talk about solutions and really come up with solutions. And I
Yeah,
honestly think it starts with education. I think it starts with education, and it starts with
I
the
completely
individual, but it
agree.
starts with education, because I completely agree with what you said, that because I went to a small school too, and I went to a couple different schools growing up. You barely ever hear about the Black experience. It's always a footnote. And the history you're taught is, you were slaves. We brought you over here as slaves. It was bad. And then Martin Luther King happened. And then there was segregation and Jim Crow. And then Martin Luther King happened and things got better. But that's not really the case, man. And it's pretty sick and insidious that they won't teach people, actual legit history. And they make you read, what's that book about the lawyer and the guy? It's not Huckleberry Finn. What is it called? You know what I'm talking about, the book. And he's a lawyer defending the black guy. You got to read that book. But I mean,
when the cage.
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Killing Mockingbird, yeah.
But
sorry.
that makes shit even more weird because in my experience, they would have you read the book out loud in class, or the teacher would read it out loud in class, and there's the N-word flying around, and you're like, this makes me feel even more uncomfortable. Like, this isn't.
Really?
Yeah, for sure. And it was just really strange. And I think it's important for people, especially black people, but for people to know our history, because our history is a lot more dynamic and a lot more beautiful than, just being crazy tribesmen and then being slaves and then now we're free. Like, our history is way more amazing and beautiful than that. And black people don't know it. And that's why, and that leads to low self-esteem. If you think you come from a slave, you automatically have low self-esteem. And then it is confusing for other cultures as well, because that's how they view you. That's your history. A lot of people have a lot of pride in their history. They have prideful things, Japanese people, Chinese people, a lot of people have really prideful things in their history that doesn't, it interacts more in the subconscious than it does in the actual conscious. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that stuff, you don't really think about it like, critically all the time, but it moves around in your subconscious. And people like to point out the issues in the black community, but they fail to point out the issues in education. And by no means am I, I love teachers. My mom's a teacher, so I have the utmost respect for good teachers that do their job well. But I think there needs to be a change in the curriculum, and there needs to be more information given to the kids to paint a more accurate and a broader picture of the different cultures that exist today in America. Because honestly, we're a melting pot here in America. Like, of course, we have our American history, but the cool thing about America is that there's a lot of different cultures and there's a lot of different people. And for us to really be on the same page and to understand and respect each other more, we got to know more about these people we're interacting with,
Yeah, no, I agree. Because there just, in my opinion, there just needs to be an overhaul of the education system. Like, that's how we build the citizens of our country.
Right. And the kids of the future.
People keep forgetting that it's not just about like teaching them to pass tests or to know the basic things they need to know, which is also needs to be addressed in our education system. But like, you're building the people and their worldview, and like the US is way too big, so like a lot of these students aren't going to interact with people from other countries,
right?
Or people from different cultures, or even like in their neighborhoods are usually like kind of segregated still, because of the redlining history.
For sure.
It's like, we got to teach them in the school that they need to be tolerant, and we also need to just teach them about like the history of their country accurately,
Definitely.
Not just white. Yeah,
definitely the accuracy, and you got, I mean, I know it's hard to do it because a lot of the American history is propaganda. Like in school, it's propaganda to feel some sense of patriotism. But I think it would be because the kids are the future. The kids literally are going to build the future. So I think it's important to give them factual information, even though it could be, there's a lot of hard pills to swallow. I think it's good to give the kids factual information so they could grow up and not make the same mistakes. You know what I mean? And be aware and cognizant of where we had pitfalls in the past and create something better, learn from our mistakes. And I think honestly, a lot of people need to swallow like some hard pills. There's a lot of conversations that need to be had that people don't want to have. And
with that, I've been really frustrated because I'm seeing this a lot in Japan with like some of my teachers that I work with, and I'm sure this happens in the US too. It's like so many of the teachers that are like really hesitant and really pushing against me talking about this, they're saying like it's so difficult for the students. Like, the students won't understand. This is too difficult. They're 15 years old and they use the internet. Like, they see more than you think they do. We need to talk to them about it. And it's like the issue isn't that the students won't understand. It's that you're not putting in the work
and you're
to understand yourself and learn how to teach. Like, that's your job, is to make this digestible for them.
And these people, I think a lot of them are uncomfortable. They don't want to have the conversations with themselves. You know what I mean? They don't want to really analyze and think critically about, the history and the situation that's presenting itself, and that's more comfortable to kind of sweep it under the rug. That's why I said I have that respect for you for, using your voice and speaking your truth, because a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people don't want to have hard conversations, and we need to have hard conversations to come together even more. You know what I mean? And it's not about looting, and it's not about fighting and wars. There's no race wars need to happen. It just needs dialogue needs to happen. People need to talk, because honestly, I've said this before, and I truly believe this. I believe 75% of Americans, whether you're Black Lives Matter, all lives matter, no lives matter, maybe not no lives matter, but majority of Americans want to see people have their civil rights. You know what I mean? They want to see people have their civil rights. They don't want to see people being murdered on the street for non-violent crimes. Like, it's sickening, and it's just not where we need to be at. And that's just one issue we need to address here in America. That's just the tip of the iceberg, because there's a lot more work need to be done. And I don't want to sound, choose my words real careful. I'm proud to be an American. America is a great country. We do a lot of things the right way, but that doesn't mean that we don't have work to do. That doesn't mean that we're perfect. That doesn't mean that we can stop here and everything's cool. We got a lot more work to do if we really want to if we want this country to live up to the Constitution, if we want this country to live up to the Declaration of Independence, we got a lot more work to do, because when those words are written, all men are created equal. Those men that wrote those words owned slaves, so this country's never really lived up to what it said to live up to. And all this patriotism people have, they got to understand that we're not quite there yet. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I almost have kind of a different approach, especially living abroad now and talking to people from different countries who, their countries has addressed racism in different ways and stuff like that. Like, the thing that is, I think the U.S. needs to deserve my pride. The government needs to step up and do better. It's honestly watching this from the outside in, like I am right now, even though I'm still a part of it and I'm connected to it. It's just embarrassing. It's disgusting.
Yeah.
There's so many negative emotions I have, and it's I have pride in where I grew up. I enjoy thinking about my childhood and and the good things about my childhood, and yeah, there's sometimes things in Japan that I'm that's so backwards. The U.S. does it better, but right now, the U.S. isn't deserving of my pride. You know.
Yeah, it's
I think Americans need to address that too. Even if you're living in the country, it's so indoctrinated into us that we need to always be proud of our country, and even questioning it a little bit. You're not showing this pride, and you're not in it to win it. And it's no, it's patriotic to question and think more of your country, that they need to be representing you too, and they need to be deserving of your pride.
Definitely. I seen a meme the other day that I thought was pretty interesting. It said, the protesters are the real patriots. Oh
yeah.
Which kind of reverses that whole train of thought, because the protesters are really people that are trying to make change and they want to see this country become a better place. We have such a weird relationship with history, because we love the Boston Tea Party.
Mm-hmm.
They teach about the Boston Tea Party in school, and they make it seem like these brave patriots did what they had to do to get things done, which if they did, fair enough. But what did those brave patriots do? They dressed up like Native Americans so they could disguise their identity and push the blame on the Native Americans. And they went, and what did they do? They destroyed property. They destroyed somebody else's property to make their point. So not only did they dress up like Native Americans and try to shift blame on a subculture, on a weaker culture, they also destroyed people's property, and that's spoke about with pride and with patriotism. But when you see people standing up with their own identity and maybe breaking some property too to get their point across, it's looked at as these guys are terrorists. It's just funny how the relationship works depending on your culture.
Well, it depends on what the government wants too.
Right.
As soon as people wanted to get together to form their own government, it was seen as patriotic. But now that people are wanting to change the powers that be, you can just shift the narrative. And it's disgusting.
Yeah, it is. It is, for sure.
And patriotism is such, in the U.S. especially, patriotism and freedom are such loaded words. So when people throw them around, it really makes you feel, and it makes you have strong feelings either of like pride or self-loathing or hatred towards another person,
Right.
just by throwing those words out there. And that's why like our current government likes to use those words so freely, and they try to attach labels to different people. No,
Right.
this is patriotism, this isn't, and it can change.
And they're just
It's just,
controlling the narrative is what they're doing.
yeah.
Just trying to control the narrative. And but I've said this before as well. I'm oddly optimistic. I think this, my personal opinion, I think this virus might be something a little bit more in biblical terms, and it's given us an opportunity to really reflect and cleanse the palate. Because when you're quarantined, a lot of people unfortunately been laid off from work, or when you're working from home, you get more of a opportunity to really think about things. You know what I mean? To really like think about yourself, think about your family, think about your country, think about your culture. Like, where is this all going? And I think it's really, exposing a lot of people to a lot of different things that they kind of swept under the rug before. They kind of try to push these things on the rug and push them behind them and not really look at them. But now people are being forced to look at and deal with these things that they didn't want to. And I think, this is a good opportunity for us to come together even stronger and to build something even better than what we have right now.
Yeah, I agree.
For sure.
Yeah, I'm also very optimistic about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And I think you have to be. You got to be positive. You got to be optimistic. We got to have dialogue. Different people got to have dialogue. In the future, I have plans on bringing some more controversial guests on the podcast to have some tough conversations, and just to do it civilly and hopefully have a positive outcome at the end of it. But you mentioned earlier that Japan is kind of concerned about privacy, internet privacy.
Mm.
Is that a big deal in Japan? What do you mean by that?
Oh yeah, it's very different than back home. So like yeah, like people's faces are always blurred on social media. Like they don't like having their faces
Wow.
on the internet. Yeah, it's actually against the law. Like you can't take pictures of people without their permission. Like you can get in huge trouble for that.
Wow.
Posting pictures without their permission. The only time it's like legal is if you're being like assaulted or sexually harassed. I think you're allowed to take a picture of them to give to the police.
Wow.
But like other than that, like it's completely illegal.
That's very
And
interesting.
it can cause issues.
That's very interesting. Is there a lot of information on why they're so extreme in their actions and their thoughts about that?
Hmm. Well, it's kind of a culture thing. That's really like it would take a lot to explain, and I'm only like digging into it a little bit. But like a kind of a basic explanation could be like, so there's a lot of concern with keeping certain lives private. Like Japan like makes a lot of groups, and there's even like words for it, like such as like soto and uchi. They basically just mean soto means outside, uchi means inside. And you can just use that in like normal conversation, talking about like, oh, outside of my house, like inside of my house or something. But it also can mean like people outside of a group and inside of a group. And you talk to people outside of a group differently than people inside of a group, because there's different levels of formality with Japanese, with like completely different language sometimes. And the same thing goes for that. You want to keep those kind of separate sometimes. So like at work, like I sometimes don't even know coworkers are like married or like they're engaged until suddenly it's just announced one day, like we're getting married. Like I didn't even, I thought this teacher was single. I like, they just don't talk about like their personal lives, or like, I only get like little snippets sometimes. Like it's just, you don't talk about your personal life at work. They never bring spouses to like work parties. Like that's like a no-no, which is like, like our private life and our family life is so important in the US. I mean, it is here too, but it's so important that like we kind of like have pride with showing off like our family or talking about our family at the workplace and like private things. But like here it's, it's just awkward and it makes people uncomfortable. And so it's the same thing with like not wanting to show your face, like the things you do outside of work, you don't always want people to know, like you want to keep your information private to yourself.
I understand that 100%. But like so what you're saying is the Japanese are innately a private culture. Just before social media, before all that, privacy was always really respected. And then
Yeah,
in this
yeah, yeah.
social media in the social media era, they still keep it like that. Well, that's interesting, and that's really cool. I think, America could use a dose of that. I think sometimes we
Yeah.
get a little bit too open and want to share every little detail of our personal lives to everybody on social media. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And I think privacy is important. And beyond that, I've had some conversations with some people, and they're making me aware of. I'm not super into tech, and I'm not super into a lot of different things, but they're making me aware that a lot of these companies, these social media companies, and these huge web browsers, they're taking your data and they're selling it, obviously for marketing, but maybe for even more sinister things.
Mm.
And it's possible that in the future there's going to be some type of data bust where there's some type of leak in the information. Everybody's data is just out there on the dark web. And so I wondered what you thought about that. And I wondered if the Japanese, thought about that at all.
They do concern themselves with it, like to a point where sometimes it seems kind of funny to me. So there's not a lot of texting here, but like people send emails a lot, which is like kind of old fashioned to me, but it's how things are done. And so they take like giving their email out like very seriously.
It's like giving your phone
Like,
number out.
yeah, it's like giving your phone number out. Yeah, it's super like you don't want. So it's like they take that very seriously, and like that's even a thing they like don't want out on the internet. Like you don't want your personal information out on the internet. You don't want your contact information. I found out why by myself one point because I gave my email willy nilly because I was like, oh yeah, that's like it's a business email, right? Like people
Right.
might be messaging for business. Especially if you're a woman here, people don't really take you very seriously, even if it's a business email. And I had like men privately message me on my like Japanese men privately message me on my email, my work email, like wanting to get like private English lessons and stuff like Japanese lessons.
That's
And,
hilarious. I mean,
I'm like,
well,
well, damn, no wonder you don't want to be giving out your email.
right.
There's a whole different culture with emails here.
That's
Um,
hilarious. They're hitting you up on the email. That's trying to get that game, trying to spit that game. That's hilarious. Is there like a class structure, like a really dramatic difference in class in Japan like there is in America? Well, I mean, it's not super dramatic in America, but it can be dramatic when you talk about the elites and the billionaires and stuff. Is there like a class system?
there is classism to a sense. Oh, dang. Sorry, this is there is classism to a sense, but there's less disparity here. There's not a huge homeless population here compared to the US. There is still some homeless people, but like it's not as common. They have a more socialist system about their government, so there's more support for
So are they
people.
a capitalist socialist country?
Kind of. There's kind of a mix of it, yeah.
Oh, cool. And
Um,
it seems to be working pretty well.
No, because actually their work culture is really bad. It's better than the U.S. in my opinion because they still have socialist structures. So like at least like every job you have to have like especially full-time jobs you have to have like benefits. You have there's national health insurance. You're guaranteed 20 days or at least 10 days. Sorry, 10 days of holiday a year. I get 20 days, which is kind of an average as well.
Nice.
Yeah, it's very nice. But Japan is like because they're leaning more capitalist, trying to kind of copy the U.S. Businesses are hiring more part-time workers and less full-time workers, so they don't get to have a lot of those benefits. And the government's kind of fighting that as well, though, but it's still happening. And then also, people are usually paid salary. They're not paid hourly unless it's part-time work. And they really like take advantage of that. Like they work so much like overtime and like people have to give so much that's like undocumented. They don't get paid for that. And it's just like a part of like an expectation. You have to do well at your job by giving so much effort that's unpaid, and it's kind of caused a huge problem with the working culture, in my opinion.
Interesting. Because, I've heard a lot of people bring up ideas of Marxism and socialism and communism, when Bernie Sanders was running, and even now with all these protests going on, I've heard those ideas coming up, and I'm not educated enough to really speak on them in a really articulate way. But I wondered, somebody from your perspective who's able to exist in another country that operates a little bit differently, like, would you want to see America become more of a capitalist, socialist country?
Oh yes, the U.S. needs more socialism. Like, oh my gosh, it's really weird. It's so like being inside, like even our news is propagandized, and
Definitely,
they
definitely.
take advantage of certain narratives from like different countries, like Canada and stuff. I think recently, like a governor in Canada who had always been outspoken against like we need to do an American system for like healthcare, and that it's like kind of bad in Canada. Like the U.S. media has been like eating that up for a long time. And he actually, with the coronavirus, he like made a public apology, and he was like, "I will never talk bad about the Canadian like health system again." He's like, "Don't do what the U.S. is doing," like completely change. And like, but it was so propagandized, and you heard like, well, actually, socialism is bad, and it's not that good. But like living here, it's like, I can go to the doctor for like $5.
Right.
Like yeah, I
Yeah.
might wait like maybe an hour or something to see a doctor, but like in the grand scheme of things, that's not long, and I'm getting things fixed, and like there are still problems with the healthcare system here, but like I have access to it,
Right.
and there's like even for me as like a foreigner living here on like not even a permanent stay visa, I'm just like temporary working visa. Like I still have certain rights here with the government where it's like if I get fired, like I still get like money from the government to help me while I'm unemployed and looking for a job. Like it's just if anything bad happened to me, I never have to worry.
Right.
I don't have a lot of stress. I do a little bit, but especially because I'm a foreigner here and not like a Japanese citizen. But it's like just watching like kind of like how the U.S. like government is fighting so hard to not like employ more like socialist systems.
Right.
It's
Right.
just like watching like they're really just fighting to like take advantage of our citizens and like not give them something that could just like make like for the people because it's
Well,
like
yeah, it goes back to that weird propaganda
yeah
of like that patriotism where in America, everybody can get rich. If you just work hard enough,
yeah
you'll get rich. You know what I mean? So don't make it too hard to get rich, because that's the goal in America, get rich, which, I think needs to be adjusted. And that's why I kind of
yeah
like Bernie. I mean, I kind of liked him
yeah
because he seemed like he had a genuine good heart, which is rare to find in politicians nowadays or ever. And, some of those socialist ideas I thought were interesting. you know it's just it's
mm,
always tricky, but I need to educate myself more on it because I don't really know enough. But yeah, it's cool. That's cool that you got healthcare is really cheap out there and stuff like that. That's really cool.
yeah and like I don't know. It's just like it's just like a whole way of life where it's like I feel like I'm always protected, even by a government that I'm not a part of. And
Yeah.
it's like in the U.S., it just feels so like thinking about living back there now. It's just like it feels so lonely. Like like you have to latch on to relationships with people because like the government that you are a part of, like it like no one has your back. Like
Right.
you,
Yeah.
like you're number one and you have to take care of yourself, and like there's no compassion
Right.
from the people who are supposed to like protect the citizens. It just seems so
Definitely.
lonely and sad and
And that
horrible.
Buddhism really influences that, doesn't it? Because compassion is a big principle of Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, compassion is a huge principle in Buddhism, and I guess that permeates the whole country. And elected officials and people feel that compassion towards the other people in society, and that's probably why they can enact some of those systems. We don't have a lot of compassion in America, I don't think. We need more of it for sure. We need more of it for sure.
Yeah, like it's so sad. It's like I almost don't feel completely American, anymore because it's just like I can't I can't imagine just doing things only for myself anymore. Like it's just, yeah, like I want to take care of myself when I'm feeling like not my best and stuff because it's important, but it's like if you have the energy and the time and it, like to just help another human being, like just imagine how much better the world would
It
be.
would be 10 times better at least. That's what it's all
Yeah.
about. Lifting each other up, trying to lift each other up and see each other do well, because it's a collective. You know, we were talking about this last podcast and how important collectives are and how they can expand and create great change in the world. I got a question for you. Are you familiar with like Elon Musk and the Teslas and all that?
I'm familiar. I do have a Reddit account, yes.
Okay. Have you heard of the Neuralink project that he's working on?
I haven't read much about it, but I like watched a few of your podcasts, and I
Oh,
saw you
okay.
like, talk about a bit of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Well, I kind of end up wrapping my podcast up with this question. Would you be so basically what it does, if you didn't know from the podcast, it puts like little fibers in your brain, it stimulates parts of your brain that aren't working well, and it gives you Bluetooth capabilities. Would you be down to get that implanted in your head?
Hmm. Personally, no. I think my life is fine without that, and I could just see so many things going wrong. Sorry, I
Yeah.
watch too much Black Mirror. I don't.
Yeah, dude, Black Mirror is a great show. I mean, it's such a good show that I have to be careful watching it. Like I could only watch it like once or twice every 6 months, because like you see shit on there and then you like see it in reality, or you see it in a couple months and you're like, what the fuck, man? That's really,
Yeah.
really weird. It's really strange. That's a good show, but it creeps me out because they do a really good job at like showing you the reality that you're not even aware of, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. So are
Oh,
you,
also, oh, sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, if you are wrapping up, I was just wanting to kind of end with saying, like, I'm still like just an ally, and I'm learning a lot. And I'm assuming maybe you might want to put my Instagram up when you
That's up to
upload the
you.
podcast.
That's up to you.
Yeah, I would love to, because actually, I would love. I'm trying to follow more POC Instagrammers. So I would love suggestions, and I would also love any information you would like me to share, especially in Japan. Like
Okay.
the voices of American POC.
Well,
I'm trying to practice my translation skills by translating that when I can, and I'd be happy to.
awesome. Well, I mean, I have a
Yeah.
couple avenues you could go down to. They're kind of extreme. I've been recently going down my path of knowledge of self and self-discovery and just gaining more insight and knowledge and perspectives. I've been
Mm.
researching the Nation of Islam, and I think it's a really
Oh
good
yes.
place to start if you want to get a really kind of clear-cut point of view of African Americans in this country. Start with Malcolm X. He's intense, but he's a little bit easier than Farrakhan. But if you really want to get into it, I watched an amazing speech by Farrakhan on
Okay.
what day was it? Was on July 4th. This July 4th that just happened. He gave an amazing speech, like a 3 hour long speech. He's an 87-year-old man, but he was able to give a 3 hour long speech with passion and with insight and with wisdom. But I will warn you right now, Charity, they are
Yeah.
complicated ideas. Okay.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
So
curious.
put your boots on when and look at
Oh,
it with the
I'm
open
ready.
mind. Yeah, look at it with the open mind. But it's
I
definitely, if you want to gain
Yeah.
more insight and you want to look at stuff from different perspectives, I highly recommend not only you but anybody watching this to watch Minister Louis Farrakhan's last speech, July 4th, 2020, or any of his speeches. Are you still making artwork?
Am I still making one? I do still have a website. I'd be happy to like send it to you if you'd
Yeah.
also
Well,
like to up.
yeah. What is it? What's the website?
Um, oh, it's a charitypage.portfolio.site.
And is it a lot of graphic
Uh,
design, or do you have paintings
yeah,
and
it has
stuff?
some of my graphic design work. I used to like make ads for McDonald's and stuff, so it has some of my animations and things that I made
Oh,
for
nice.
them. And yeah, and I also have like an about me, and I also have like a Japanese page. So I've been like kind of trying to get into designing in Japan as well. So I might start, and I kind of have like a bilingual page, and so if people are just curious what Japanese looks like, they can just like check that out too.
Definitely. Well, Charity's a really talented artist. Like I said, I went to classes with her. We didn't hang out or talk too much, but we were always friendly, and I always really respected her work. So, you guys check out her website, check out her work, talk to her if you're interested in getting some graphic design done. She does a great job. I really appreciate you joining me on this podcast, Charity.
Of course, yeah. I feel like we kind of deviated from talking about Japan as probably much as you like, but
No,
I mean, you're free to message me anytime.
I think I got all the main questions that I wanted, answered. You answered them, and you answered them well. So I really
Okay.
appreciate you taking the time out and talking to me.
Oh, thank you, JD. I had a wonderful time.
Yes, take it easy, Charity.
Bye-bye.
Bye.